Hey teachers, welcome back to the channel. It is time for our Reflect and Reset for April 13th through the 19th. I'm Haley here at Teacher's Pet. I am a full-time assistant teaching professor at an R2 university, so a 4-4 load plus service, campus, all the good stuff that teachers, educators, grad students, we all go through in a semester in a week. Now in this video, we are going to reflect on how our past week went using the retrospective process, and then we'll hop into our planners, calendars, however you'd like to organize your life, and look ahead just to get ready for the upcoming sort of class schedule, research projects, whatever you're working on. This week we also are going to end with a new little routine and habit that I'm just gonna call the special reset prompt. So definitely stick around through the end of all of your planning, our chat's discussion, so we can reflect, reset, and move forward together. If that all sounds good to you, go ahead and grab your planner, a piece of paper. I like to use my whiteboard here so we can start with the retrospective process. Now, why retrospective? What is a retrospective? I do teach like technical communication and information design, so various sort of STEM and development kind of project adjacent fields. And we use this idea of a retrospective, kind of borrowed from a lot of project, product, management kind of roles, agile development cycles, iterative development cycles, all of that. And I find them so helpful in those contexts because it's a chance to really stop and go, did we meet what we expected and wanted to do? How did we do it? What decisions did we make? What challenges did we overcome? And, what are we going to do moving forward? Now, I've been using project retrospectives in my college courses, having my students fill them out for every single assignment that they do as a way to get into that personal review, some self-assessment, and it gives me a great little document to offer feedback and really better understand what it is that they understood about the projects, the assignments, took away from it, and are going to learn moving forward. So I love it. Definitely would 10 out of 10 recommend doing it in your class, and we're going to practice going through that process today. So there are 3 parts of the retrospective. I will put the prompts up on the screen and play some music for you while you answer them in your own, notes, planners for yourself. Now the 3 that we're going to go through is first, assessment. So really thinking about how did the week go, right? What did you set out to accomplish? And, you can give yourself a little score. Did you meet those expectations? Did you accomplish your goals, or did you not? The second thing that we'll look at is our process reflection, which is really, asking and answering questions of what decisions, what choices, what tools did we use that led to some of our outcomes and expectations, both good and could be improved. And then the last section is just going to be that what are we going to carry forward? What did we learn that is helpful? What we learn that we don't necessarily want to do anymore? And identifying, any potential changes as well as targets for the next week. All right. Grab those notes and let's get started with our first section. I'm going to be writing down my reflection while you write down your reflection, and then we'll chat afterwards. And I definitely encourage you to share anything that you feel comfortable in the comment section. So that way we can start building a community and sort of inspire, help, support, and encourage each other, especially as we all go through, such a challenging, rapidly sort of adjusting landscape of education. So please comment with some of your sort of things that you accomplished and lessons learned and tips and advice. I definitely want to read and see them to help me out as well. All right, first, assessment. I want you to answer the specific question, how did your week go? If it helps, I always like to pull up my planner from the prior week, looking back through, okay, what did I set out to do? What did I say that I needed to get done? How's my checklist looking to help me through this section? Let's get to it. I'll see you in a little bit. All right, and if you're not quite ready, no worries. Pause me until you go through your planner and feel good, but I think I have finished mine. It was actually a pretty straightforward, simple week for me. I was really just focused on a lot of like grading and course prep stuff, which I was able to go through. And so looking back at my planner, I actually am very excited and proud of myself for checking off almost every single task that I had planned almost every day of the week. And so I definitely was in a super productive headspace that I want to think about in the next question. But specifically, I had set out to grade progress reports. So my students, I teach this semester, I'm teaching one class, but multiple sections of intro to technical writing presentation. So it's sort of a first year sophomore level course. We use 2000 level at my institution. And so with that, they've had all their projects. We're, not a little bit past halfway, but we are just starting the last unit, which has the most points, biggest projects available. So I had them pause, when we got back from spring break, turn in these short, they're like ranged between 1 to like 3 pages is what most students did, including like a table to track like their assignments and everything. Write a progress report. They had an initial plan at the beginning of the semester that they turned in called a learning proposal, as they selected what assignments and projects and goals they had for themselves. And now they were just updating that with what they've accomplished. So it was a pretty easy, fast thing to grade since they were much more reflective. Really, I was looking for the basics, sort of standards, kind of like, loose template, key things that we would expect in a progress report in the workplace. But besides that, it was a nice quick grading process as I just got a lot of insight into their own kind of reflective stance on where they're at and picked up a few really great tidbits of things that multiple people identified as being, helpful working in the class. And then things that, maybe I will think about adjusting over the summer as I prep this same class, but for the fall. And so I got all of those done though. They had turned them in on like over last weekend on the 12th. No, on the 5th. They had turned those in. And yeah, I finished them on Friday. I got all of them posted. So it didn't take me very long at all, which is really good to get my whole entire, all 3 sections done. So check off there, yay. Let's see, I also was working on editing some videos and starting a report for my fellowship. So kind of doing my own progress report, which means I also have a great example to show all of my students next week. I always like to bring them a connection to, IRL at the beginning of every lecture lab session where I just share how the things we're talking about in class, the concepts, have shown up in some way, outside of class in my life. So working on that report that I'm writing for my fellowship absolutely ties into the types of updates and reports and things that they've been writing. So that's in a good spot where I got those done. In terms of the videos, they're all sent off to the next stage of people approvals processes beyond me. So I'm just waiting for that to wrap up and come back, but I feel good. And then the last 2 things were kind of soft things, but I did them, prepping for next unit next week, very standard. I've been writing a OER textbook, which I've finished, unfortunately, and I really it's worked so well the first, half of the semester, but we just caught up to where the chapters were, as I've been just doing a few every semester. And so I just had to go back and, curate and make sure that the new materials that I was giving, since I don't have my textbook chapters anymore, we're gonna work and kind of going through that sort of stuff, updating the note-taking guide, everything like that. So that went well, got that done, wasn't too hard though. And then some just house chores, personal projects were a little bit mid, but I still have, the weekend, parts of the weekend to get them done. So I'm feeling all right about it. Oh, what's one accomplishment that you are most excited or proud of that you got done this week? Definitely let me know. Otherwise, let's move on to step 2 in the project retrospective, which is our process reflection. And it's really answering the question, what allowed us to be successful or what stood in the way, right? So you really want to stop and kind of reflect on what choices did we make and what outcomes were tied to those choices. Let's hit a little bit of music and think about how, right, our assessment relates to our tools, choices, and activities. All right, fantastic. So think about, right, elements of your process, really the choices that you made, what outcomes did those choices lead to? And so for me, right, being successful with getting just all my grades updated without feeling overwhelmed and stressed. Definitely some of those choices go back to, I set up a little grading queue so I don't get burnt out and overwhelmed in a single day. And actually, like, it didn't stick to my queue as well as I would like, but I knew this project, was going to be not the worst to grade. So I did initially set out to do like 5 to 6 a day, and I actually did not work on them at all Monday or Tuesday. So I did have to then, work on a lot more of them Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but it ended up being all right because of how I set up my grade. My rubric is skill-based, which makes it just really fast, really clear if students were able to do something or not, or how successfully they showed the specific skill in action. And I use, right, our teacher's pet app to help me with those rubrics. And so if you feel like you need a little bit of help with the rubrics, you can always sign up for a pilot program. Because it definitely has helped me just think more in terms of the outcome that I'm looking for and get a little bit less caught up in the exact sort of, details of the project. So anyway, those two things definitely help that I want to keep using as we move forward into also more substantial projects to end the semester. Otherwise, I like to toggle between the individual and the global views in my Canvas gradebook, just to make sure I have, everything is accurate. I didn't miss anything or forget to enter something. And I did find, a few of those, maybe like outstanding quizzes that technically haven't been graded since the student didn't submit anything. And so I went through and made sure every single student's gradebook was fully, completely up to date, and then sent them all individual comments and notes, just, hey, here as of, April 11th, here is exactly where your grade and point totals stand. And a lot of students definitely have reflected that that's helpful to just know exactly, because if you especially are at a university that uses Canvas, it kind of gets a little wonky, especially when it's always trying to grade, only calculate things only based on graded assignments, and there's kind of a lot of sort of accidental inflation that happens with that, and students get confused. And I do use a kind of non-traditional, more ungraded structure of choice. So it's important that I always tell my students exactly where they're at, because they definitely can get a little bit confused with how Canvas hates anything that isn't a flat percentage. So those were two good things. The other thing that I did was just picking when I would work on certain projects a little bit more intentionally. So I worked on those video projects first thing in the morning. And then while my computer was like rendering out files or, needing time to like think upload, then I could go and work on, some other element where I could use my laptop instead. And just try to be very like intentional in my workflow of what tool and what tech and what system would be running at what time and when I could get everything done. So I really didn't feel like I made bad choices this week because I really got everything done that I wanted to get done. All right, now the last stage of a good retrospective is to think about, okay, moving forward, what are we going to continue doing? So looking back at your list of choices, what are you going to keep doing because they were good? What are you going to stop doing if there's anything that got in the way? And start just making a list of what you need to carry forward and accomplish next week. All right, as we round that out, what are you going to keep doing? What are you going to change? Any tips, lessons, things you want to share? Want to hear them for sure. So for me, my next week is actually going to be pretty chill, as we'll see when I like pop into my actual planner. But I do need to start really thinking about my finals preparation. The materials and everything is there, but for my students, their finals is just really a huge project. And so I just want to make sure everything is set now, so that way I'll be able to turn over those really substantial, kind of complicated projects quickly. So that way my students will have a chance to do revisions if necessary. So that's kind of, an important step I need to start this week, even though they don't turn them in actually until May 3rd. I do just want to make sure that my grading notes and videos and rubrics, just all of that, all those ducks are in a row. And just, kind of look ahead at what do I need to start planning for. So it's a pretty low stress week for me when those projects come in. Otherwise, I need to also keep working on my fellowship. So I'm going to continue that practice of, okay, how can I use both my kind of at home like desktop computer and then my actual, university issued laptop, sort of in tandem. So that way I can maximize basically computing power. So kind of planning out what can I start working on one computer as it's like loading, rendering, uploading, doing whatever, what can I actually do on my campus laptop, with a little bit less of those CPU demands. So that way I'm kind of working well. And then I actually had a few different coffee meetings this past week. And it was just really nice. And I want to keep doing it, like going over to the university center, just to grab a quick cold brew. It's pleasant, and just like getting out and about on the campus felt kind of nice instead of being locked in my office. So that was a good choice. Working in different places, I think helped me be really productive this past week. Love that. All right. So we got our reflect kind of portion done with kind of a good game plan of how we did, what things, we want to keep doing or we want to change, with some forward looking. So let's now hop into our planners and do the actual kind of reset, get everything ready stage of the video. So I got my planner over here. Grab your planners, digital calendars, however you like to keep track of things. And let's start filling in some stuff, and then we'll kind of hop into mine to think about. But first, based on the reflect, I have not yet filled in my full to-do list. So now that I've had a chance to look back at the past week, think about what it is I want to keep doing, what it is I want to change doing, I can fill in my to-do list. So I encourage you to stop and just think about the top 5 max biggest things that you want to accomplish this week. And those 5 big things is what you will use and we will use next Sunday to reflect on how well we met the objectives and we got it done. So let's think of me 4 or 5 things that you want to accomplish this week. All right, I got my top 4 things that I want to focus on this week, and actually have a little bit of downtime because my students aren't turning in new projects until the 26th. So since I won't have to grade outside of the standard, weekly participation quizzes, all those easy, quick things to grade, I am going to be focusing on, I have a talk that I'm doing on Thursday. So that's one big objective, is have that go well, that I'll be reflecting on next Sunday. Stay tuned. And then I also want to just make sure I get all those grading materials ready for the presentations. They'll turn on the 26th. And then they turn their final projects in May 3rd, the following week. So this upcoming week, I just want to get everything good, ready for their presentations, because also running presentations, reviewing them, always is a little bit stressful. So I want to make sure I'm just ready to go there. And then I'm going to turn back to my fellowship that I've had this spring semester, expanding one of the strategic reports and results I've been working on, and then refining my kind of overall fellowship review report of, everything that I accomplished, and, just all the stuff, the deliverables there. But since I do have a little bit of a slow, quiet week on that front, I feel pretty optimistic and good that I'll be able to get a lot of stuff done. All right. So now that I have those sections filled out, I'm going to hop into the video of me fully, creating and filling in my planner, and we'll just talk a little bit about it. If you would prefer to fill in your planner without me talking about mine, without, all of that, and you might be interested and want to grab just my decorate and chill video, link over here. Otherwise, hop into your planners and let's just fill in our weeks. So for me and my semester, I'm actually starting week 13, again, April 13th through the 19th. Oh, how funny. And for my students, my class, it is our technical and analytical reports unit. So definitely kind of a big one as we go along. The playlist that I'm going to have them kind of look at and do, or I'll be using, is called Remixes and Upbeat Vibes. You can grab that in the video description. And basically it's just, fun kind of at this point in the semester, everyone, it's a little burned out, but we're also kind of excited and energized that the summer's almost here. And so I just feel like this playlist matches my energy. And so you can absolutely go check that out. Linked in Spotify. All right. So then I have some things like Monday is fairly standard. I got my 2 class sections, and then the ungrading group, we meet every other week. And so Monday is one of those meetings. So we just go and share, ideas, inspiration, tool support, questions, that kind of stuff. Tuesday, I actually have a doctor's appointment, that's going to take up kind of all of the morning. So yeah, that's going to be annoying and in the way, but as it happens, as we go. Wednesday, I just have class, another really nice, calm, easy day. And then Thursday, which I also write in as, wow, this is an important section, is the AI Appy Hour. So I'm doing it with the Faculty Resource Center on my campus. And in that Faculty Appy Hour, I actually am going to be talking about Google Gemini in some ways that you can, or that I prompted and use it to help me with some of my course prep stuff. And then I also will be doing an early demo of Teacher's Pet and, kind of comparing the two and how Gemini helps with some things, but then, we are building Teacher's Pet specifically because of the gaps and annoyances and challenges and things that I saw within the Google environment of apps. So I'm definitely excited just to share in my campus and explain some of those tools and inspo to help other professors speed up kind of their workflow and accomplish more with less. And then Friday I sit on the student media advisory board. So I have a board meeting. I believe the student media, so it's our newspaper and radio station and our student magazine publications, are going to be presenting their budgets to us. So definitely, a good experience for the student leaders and directors to practice having to explain their budget decisions to a board as we can just kind of go through. But yeah, honestly, my week is looking very chill, very good. So the last thing that I do is come up with my quote, which definitely also inspired the entire design and decoration and theme. So I had this in mind, obviously before I started decorating, but my sort of quote for the week is, my dreams might let me know all the stars are closer. Because again, last week, it's a little bit of that panic week, just getting back from break. Oh my gosh, I need a new unit. Right now, everyone's kind of settling in. They're really starting to pick what their project topics are. We're starting to make that actual progress and see how the semester is going to shape out and feel better about it. So, it feels a little bit more of a uplifting, we're almost through April. Let's get this done. Week 13, there's literally only a few more weeks left. All of our dreams are closer. And after reading their progress reports, I really, I feel that from what they wrote. A lot of folks, almost everyone is this was my plan. This is honestly what I expected to be at the semester. Or there were a few who were ooh, I'm definitely behind, but I also understand exactly why I'm behind. And everybody came through with a plan to sort of settle on a grade that they'd be happy with. So that is my week. I like to continue decorating as I go through every morning to actually fill out my specific kind of steps and exact action items for the day. But I'm feeling definitely optimistic and very upbeat about this week ahead. All right. Yay! So, thanks, y'all. But before you go this week, I challenge myself, I challenge you. You can go ahead and, challenge a colleague maybe about it as well. But this week's special intention, to make sure that we keep our upbeat vibes, that we are able to finish the semester strong, that we're staying focused on what needs to happen between now and sort of when your semester ends, probably sometime mid-May, is to I challenge you, make sure you say no to something you don't want to do this week. At least I know I get a lot of ask requests, and there's things that it's yeah, I might be meh on it. I might be lukewarm. If it's not an enthusiastic, yes, I have the time, I have the interest, I have the capacity. This is going to help me with my goals. Say no to it. Stay focused this week. We're almost to the summer where we can expand out. But for now, we're going to say no to things that we don't super want to do. All right. Thanks y'all for joining me on this Sunday Reflect and Reset. I hope that you are ready, recharged, empowered to move forward into your next semester. So if you are a teacher, educator, grad student, however you kind of work in our teaching education landscape, I hope you have a great week and I hope you have a great class. Bye.